Alright, so now we have our first little drum idea going here, and let's actually take down the velocity view a little and also take down the entire piano roll view, and right click on the drum rack track to create a new MIDI track. Insert MIDI track, the blue one, MIDI free, and now we want to add a bass to our little drum groove here. So we have our bass wave sound in our course files, and if you click on the MIDI track right now, down here it says no clip selected because we're still in the clip view. And if you want to make sure to be able to quickly add wave files on a MIDI track, double click that one, and now it says drop instrument or sample here because we're in the device view. So now I'm picking up this bass sound here, and I'm just going to drop the sample down here, and it loads up in another instance of the simpler device. And now we want to enter some bass ideas. And if you happen to have a MIDI controller or a MIDI keyboard connected to your computer, and this ARM session recording is activated, you can actually just play ideas now. If you want to do it on your computer keyboard, you need to activate this knob up here. But let's quickly play some ideas for a bass groove along with this drum groove here. Alright, so we have a little bit of a latency problem because we are recording this right now and we are recording our screen in 4K. Now you noticed we were playing this back and we put in some bass notes, but we actually forgot to record them. So nobody ever hit record here or record button here. In Ableton Live 9 or lower versions, there would be no way of capturing what we just did. But if we kind of liked our first idea and we want to use it and we are not sure if we can come up with the same thing again, Ableton 10 has a nice feature called Capture up here. And that one basically will show you the history of what you played on your MIDI device. And if I click it and quickly stop the playback, what you see we have a new MIDI clip here with the history of what was played on our keyboard. And now we can go back, and Ableton actually tries to make sense of what happened, and not sure if it fails here, but let's select the last 4 bars maybe and zoom in a little. And it's very easy to see we were late. You know, we were always late. We were actually trying to hit the first beat here, and you see the MIDI is coming in late. But maybe we can do something about it. So let's take a closer look at it. And since this and this is the same as this and this, or supposed to be the same as this, I'm just going to pick the last 2 bars, you know, with these locators. Zooming into these 2. We are kind of late here, we are kind of late here, we're quite late here, and we're very late here, and very late here as well. So now we can manually adjust that, or we can try to use another functionality, right-clicking into our piano roll, quantize settings, open that up, and we can see quantize to 16th notes. And it will try to adjust our MIDI information to the closest 16th grid available. So that would be probably this one. If we check back, are we looking at a fixed grid of 16th notes? Yes. And going back into the quantize settings. Now we could try to do this and we could also tell it to adjust the node to the start of the grid, not to the end of the grid, like right here, only the start. We only want to, we want to keep the length of this, but we want to adjust it towards the start. And this amount percentage here tells us how accurate do we want to be. Do we want to be like super algorithmic accurate computer music style, or do we want to have it a little bit swingy and a bit less accurate? So let's try a setting of 84 and see what happens. So now we moved closer to the first one here, closer to that one, and well, this one looks very off. This one was actually closer to the second 16th grid than to the first one, so maybe we will just take that one to the first one manually and now see what it sounds like. And we're going to bring it down a little in our fader in the mixer section here. Okay, so we played it quite short. We can also take all those MIDI notes and play them a bit longer now. If we select all of them and hover over the end of a note, this bracket will show up. And let's take like a complete 16th note. We can even think of doubling that. So go like this. Okay, maybe a bit shorter. Alright, and we will work on that a bit more later. Now we can do another thing. We can go back to quantize settings, right-clicking and quantize settings, and actually say, you know what? We want to be even more accurate, say 95. And you see it moves closer to the beginning of the grid, of the respective grid here. Alright, so now we have this basic bass pattern going, and actually there's one thing: we're playing the first bass note together at the same position with our first kick note. So if I'm looking for my first kick note, you know, if this happens to you, what you can do is click fold, and it will only show those keys where you actually placed a note. Very handy. So it will show everything, and it will show just the used ones with fold. And you see we are playing the kick at the beginning of our first beat pattern in the bar. And we are doing the same thing with our bass here. And this can pile up a lot of information in our bass frequency and kind of give you a feeling of a muddy sound. And that's why we are quickly going to add a sidechain here. Maybe you've heard of sidechaining already, but we're going to put a more extended video into the bonus section in the back of the course. So what we are going to do is click on this track, take a look at the device view, and now go to Audio Effects in Ableton and pick up a compressor. Picking up the compressor and place it where it says Drop Audio Effects here. So we just drag it over, still on our bass track. And we will open up the compressor arrow here. Sidechain toggle is what it says in the info view. So open the sidechain toggle. And if it doesn't make sense to you right now, don't worry too much about it. It's a very common technique. And we'll also repeat this step on a couple of other tracks later in the course. So just follow along, activating sidechain here and taking audio input drop down from kick, from our first track where we are having our kick placed on. So now we are taking the audio signal from that kick and we are reacting to it with that compressor here. And we are telling our bass sound to always go down a little bit in the volume whenever that kick is playing, because we want our kick to be a bit louder in the beginning than our bass sound. So we are bringing down this threshold arrow here a little bit, let's say -15, and play everything, hitting spacebar. I'm actually going to bring it down a bit further, -24. And let me quickly exaggerate the effect so you know exactly what's going on. Putting it down all the way. Can you hear how it's moving out of the way from the kick? It's really leaving that space for the kick now. So I'm going to bring it back to a value of 25 or something. And now we have this typical sidechain effect already set up here. We want to add in another effect right behind that compressor. So the chain goes audio signal from our bass sound, then we are entering that sidechain thing, and now we are going to put in an equalizer to cut off some frequencies we don't really want to play here. So I'm picking up an EQ8 from our audio effects, equalizer 8, and I'm dragging that one behind the compressor where it says drop audio effects here. Still everything happening on our bass MIDI track. And now you can see this equalizer here. And this one is very useful because it will also show you the spectrum of what you're playing. If I'm moving up this low cut here, clicking into this node number 1 and moving it up, you will notice how the EQ is taking effect. So we're cutting out bass frequencies. I'm just setting it back to the default setting by hitting Command and Z. And I just want to cut out a little bit of these mid frequencies here by picking up the second node, going to around 500 Hertz in the frequency range, and then making sure the gain knob, which controls the gain of that node, goes down substantially. And let's play it back. And I'm keeping it in this position for now, making a little bit of room and taking out a couple of those frequencies around 500 Hertz. Okay, so we're cutting this EQ off, setting it back to compressor. So this was the last view, going back to this place here. Okay, so now with this bass sound and with this sidechain compression here, we can move on to the next part.